Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. This is Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Mentor Select serves parents who are raising teens. Every week, Derek interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. All while parenting them to be successful adults, focusing on social and emotional development, something that's left out of the classroom, but not in ours. Be sure to subscribe, share, and rate. This is Mentor Select, and this is your host, Derek Phillips.
All right, parents, today we have joining us Bryan Chatfield. How are you, Bryan?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Great pleasure to have you. So I always love having a fellow Hoosier on the podcast.
Yeah,
you and I definitely go way back to our high school track days. So it's been great watching everything you've done and just how you've just matured into a public servant over the years. So I look forward to talking to you about that.
Sure.
So Bryan, where are you joining us from?
So I currently live in Indianapolis, Indiana, west side of Indianapolis.
Okay, got it. Now, I know you and I met in Gary. Are you originally from Gary?
Yes, I am. Originally born and raised in Gary, Indiana. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Now, first, want to congratulate you. I know you recently won an election.
Yes.
Big congratulations to that. Tell us a little bit about the election you won.
Sure. And I'd like to start off by saying this would be was my third election that I've run for after 2 losses. So I finally did it. So I say that to tell anybody that whatever your hopes and dreams are, don't quit. So, I'm living proof that you can take a couple of L's and it doesn't matter. You continue the marathon. But yeah, so I ran this year for Wayne Township Advisory Board, and what that office is charged with. If you ever heard of most states and counties have township governments within their cities, but Marion County definitely does, and we're a township on the west side of Marion County. And so that office is charged with poor relief, also maintaining cemeteries and parks. And we also manage the budget for our local fire department. And so my role on this 5-member board is to advise and vote on different policies and procedures, as well as the budget as it concerns the fire department and poor relief in the management.
Wow. Cool. Yes, there's some important responsibilities. And I just kind of want to go back to your message. You mentioned your third time running. Well, yeah, third time's the charm. for sure.
Yes.
But that's so important because I'm a big believer in you don't lose until you actually quit, till you give up. So like I said, you're a shining example. Like after the first loss, you could have quit, but no, second, come back, second, all right. And then at the same time, you're learning so much throughout that process. And it just makes you a better public servant once you do win. So big congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I contributed a lot of that to something you're very familiar with is track and field. I think that's where it started for me, that ability to, no matter what, you don't quit, you don't stop, you don't slow down, you run through the line.
Right.
And sometimes you don't do well one day and you go back to the drawing board. And like you said, you pick up what you've learned and try to fix the mistakes that you've made. And you continue on. So yeah, I definitely took those skills into my adulthood.
Yeah, I have as well, big time. Now, with you being involved in politics, I know a lot of teens, they may not understand the importance of getting involved in the political process and voting. What are some tips you have for parents to kind of get their teens really educated and excited about the political process and actually voting once they have the opportunity to?
It's easy for me to sort of speak to my own personal experience and starting in the home. For me, just being in a room with my grandmother, and she would sit me in front of the TV every Sunday, and we would watch the news roundup. Her, my grandfather, and uncles and things that I'd be having conversations about, the current affairs. This was the 90s, so I'm a young man. But what stuck out to me and what I think impacts me today, they would turn around and ask me my opinion. Now, I have to admit, the first time I wasn't paying attention. I was just in the room and but
Right.
she continued to ask me, well, how do you feel about it? And, it definitely was challenging for me being a young man to come up with anything. But I think over time, what I got out of it was like, wow, I get to have, for the first time, I'm not getting kicked out the room as adults talk.
Yeah.
And so I think it begins at home. Don't be afraid to have those conversations and ask those questions. You never know what type of confidence you're instilling in a young person. I have these conversations with my goddaughter a lot, and she's 15, and she struggled, with coming up with an answer because she, basically just is not a concern of hers. And so,
Right. Right.
I try to, break it down to her and start to connect the dots by just kind of explaining in her world how it's going to impact her. Her
Okay.
being 15 and, in a couple of years, she'll be going to college or joining the military or, being an entrepreneur or getting a job. For me, just making it plain that that's only 4 years from now, and you want to make sure you're not having adults make decisions based on your well-being. You may have different ideas about, how college funding should go, at what age can you, start voting or get a license or have a drink, a number of things. I don't encourage that, obviously, but there are a lot of things I try to connect the dots for.
Right. Right. Wow. Yeah, they brought up some really good points. First is in your own personal example where your grandparents were asking for your feedback. Hey, what is your opinion about this? I think that goes a long way in engaging teens and making them feel, as young adults, makes them feel a part of the conversation versus like to get kicked out the room or just feeling that it doesn't relate to them. I think that goes a long way. And then also another thing you mentioned about building their confidence. That is so important. Building their confidence early and through that engagement, can help a lot indeed.
Absolutely.
Now, as a African American, how important do you feel it is for teens to see just the representation of diversity amongst politicians to kind of get them inspired to say, hey, I can possibly do that too one day, run for office?
Absolutely. I think is very important. Actually, I believe it's a part of my responsibility to be as visible as possible for that very reason. One of my first tasks, or not tasks that I have to do as a public official, but just me knowing that I'm a Black male, my efforts to get into elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools and talk to these children as still a fairly young Black man. But I think that goes a long way because that's what did it for me. Although Barack Obama was very inspiring in 2008, and that
Right.
definitely had an impact on me. But I often tell people that, being from Gary, Indiana, before I even heard of Barack Obama, there was a Dr. Vernon Smith, who was a state
Absolutely.
representative. There was
Yeah.
Chuck Hughes, who was a city county councilor, and we had Hatchett, Mayor Hatchett, that your parents and grandparents always spoke of. And so for me, it was very easy for me to see myself run for office. I
Right.
just grew up in an environment, fortunately, that I seen it all around me. And then those guys did similar things that I'm going to make an effort to do, is reach out and, be visible, because that imaging and what our children see is so important. And for them to see a young Black man hold office, I think is going to be one of my greatest responsibilities.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in can't be what you can't see, and being able to see that firsthand. And like you said, Dr. Vernon Smith, he comes to mind as someone I saw growing up, and the current mayor for Gary, Mayor Jerome Prince.
Right.
I went to school with his son. So that was another example. It's like, wow, okay. But yeah, it was really powerful being able to see Black men in serving as public officials and elected officials. So yeah, it goes a long way. And I can say now, as I've gotten older, seeing public officials like yourself and Kenneth Allen, that inspired me. Like, all right, maybe something I want to consider one day in politics. So
that's the hope. That's the hope.
yeah, definitely serve it as an inspiration. Certainly. Mentioning going into schools, I know elementary, middle, and high school, especially the earlier the better. I guess, can you talk to us more about, I know previously you worked, I guess, as an election board official. What was your role in that capacity?
So for about 3 years, I was the outreach and recruitment coordinator for the Marion County election board. So my responsibility basically entailed recruiting all the election day and early voting workers and staff. But also another part of my job was to inform the community about the upcoming elections. When do you vote? Where can you vote? And that sort of thing. But I spent a lot of my time in high school registering young adults for elections, especially if they were a junior heading into their senior year. We were actually recruiting them also to work the polls, to kind of get their feet wet and really into the process. And also just to, talk a little bit about why elections matter and how it impacts their families and their friends and the people around them. It was a lot of fun doing that. It was at times it was challenging conversations to get a kid to really can make the connection. For example, social justice and police reform impacts their lives, and being aware of who's going to run for mayor or who's running for mayor, who makes decisions about who's going to be the police chief, and and ultimately directing officers and their approach to young Black males. So I spent a lot of my time sticking on issues that directly impacted them, and I believe we got a lot of positive responses. And one of the biggest things I learned during that experience is that children pay a lot more attention to the issues than I was led to believe, and they are aware. But I think for the most part, I found students really looking for someone that inspired them and they can believe in. Prior to, I would think that teens just they don't want to get involved because they just want to play video games. But and they may want to play video games, but I think if the right candidate came along, even at the local level, and they're able to see that person, I think it gets them, a little bit more like, okay, that's just a regular person. Like, and he sounds, he's not all proper or this or that. He's, a regular person. And so they were more willing to listen, I believe.
Yeah, I think President Barack Obama was a good example of that, how he kind of just got so many people, young people, excited about voting maybe for the first time. And it was because he was able to relate to them and show them that, hey, I'm not just a 70, 80-year-old man that has out of touch. I understand your problems and what you're going through. So, yeah, it makes a big difference. And just like with anyone, you talked about how just kind of connecting the dots and relating showing teens how politicians really kind of impact their life. So once you're able to relate that to them and make them understand, it makes a difference who's in office. And I want to have some say so in that.
Yep.
Yeah, see how that can be effective.
Yep, I think so.
No doubt about it. So as far as parents who are thinking, hey, yeah, I want to, I'm hearing what Bryan's saying. I'm definitely on board with that. But what are some ways that parents can kind of help their teens actually get involved in the political process? I know you mentioned like maybe working the polls. What are some other ways?
Well, first I would, a lot of times when I worked for the election board, the government teachers and social studies teachers at the schools were really the ones that were reaching out to me and coordinating, getting me in their doors. So I would, tell parents to start off with those teachers, because usually they're like me, they're the political nerds, and they're ready to talk about politics all day long, if you haven't learned just by this interview. But I would say start off there, and as well as contact your local election board. Every city and county has one, and typically there's someone in that office that's charged with outreach and engaging younger adults in the process. And like you mentioned, they can get an opportunity to even work the polls. I mean, here in Marion County, we had teens as young as 16 that were able to actually work at the polls, and actually a lot of counties prefer to get teens and young adults to handle the election process because of technology and their ease of effort with it.
Right.
But and I think it's a lot of fun for them. Like the teens that I've run into that had that experience, they enjoyed it and get a couple of dollars as well. But, you just never know how much, that day or that impact of working the polls may have on them. They get a chance to meet politicians, and they get a chance to meet officials and things like that. And they're actually a part of the process. I think that would go a long way for students, and they don't have to grow up to be, a politician or run for office. It's a good chance that it happen, and I would love to see that. But I think that those are skills that they can carry on into any career.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, is that also a good place for teens to start if they do have aspirations of one day being a politician?
Yes, absolutely. I would go out, and if they're definitely interested in running for office and think that's something that they will want to do, I would first start off with getting a mentor. One thing I did years ago, it was probably about, I was in college at the time, but I emailed Dr. Vernon Smith. He didn't know me from Adams, and I emailed him and said, hey, this is, I think I would want to one day run for office. And to my surprise, he emailed me back. And I remember there was a dialogue, and, he pointed me in the right direction. So, like I said, most politicians or government teachers or whatever, they chopping at the bit to talk about it. So if you're interested, I would say reach out to someone, and Google your local election board and see who's your representatives, and reach out to them. But election day, if there's an election coming up, I would say absolutely. If you can get opportunity to serve in that process, you're working for the country. You're doing a great service, and I think that would go a long way in inspiring and just giving students that basic foundations of what it's all about. Because it starts from somewhere, and I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, great advice. And as you mentioned, getting those mentors. I guess a lot of times mentees looking for mentor, they may assume like, this person's not going to respond back to me, or they don't want to be bothered. But like a lot of times they're anxious. They want to be approached and talk about something that generally interests them, something that
Absolutely,
they're so passionate about.
And I definitely offer myself up. Bryan Chatfield. You find me on Facebook. I have a website, bryanchatfield.com. Reach out. I definitely would be open to having any conversation with anyone that's interested in the process. Actually, that's one of my goals. If I can get, and because you shouldn't have told me that you possibly may be interested in running, because my goal is to anybody.
Don't turn it back now.
Nah, you shouldn't have told me that because I'm not going to let you forget it. And I'm that way with everybody around me. And I think most folks that are part of this, especially your local politicians, usually they're getting into it to serve people. And I say, definitely reach out to those guys.
Along those same lines, what would you say are some common misconceptions of politicians or serving as a public official that people have?
I would say you hear a lot, maybe they're just in it for the money or the power. And I can just spell at least the local offices. It's a government job, and it's just
right.
Not a whole lot of money in a government job. I won this seat, but I didn't get some, incredible raise or anything like that. So I think that's one of those things that people misunderstand. I'll be candid. There are politicians at the local and national level that aren't there for the right reasons. And maybe they are in it for the money or the attention or whatever they motive may be, without it being about the people. But I think that's one of the things that also encouraged me to run, to be one extra person in the room that's not like that.
Right.
So I would say if you are a person that's really interested in serving people, politics is it's a contact sport, as they say, and you're going to run into some people that you wonder, like, wow, why are they even here? Or, why are they doing that? But I think that's even a more important reason why we should have good people join the process and running for office up and down the ballot. The more the merrier, because some folks need to be get out the seat. I ran against an incumbent that basically was just there to get the check. And I think that's a total disservice to the community, and that's one of the reasons why I ran, to say that no, that's not what we're going to do, and at least in my little corner of the world. And so I think, to answer your question, I think there's a lot. Those are some myths, that it's just this overwhelming amount of crooked people in the process, but I don't think that's the case. Are there bad apples? Yes. And you should run it when you see them, run against them. I think that's how you solve them.
Exactly. Yeah, you're so right. And I always say that about every organization, there's bad apples, but fortunately, a lot of times they represent the minority. And I think it's truly important to really highlight what you just said about, you're a great example of how an individual can change. Like you're side of the world. You're making a difference and deciding like, hey, I don't think that is right, so I want to stand up and do something about it, versus saying like, the system is just corrupt, the politicians are crooked, and just, hey, there's nothing I can do about it. But no, good people like yourself can do something about it. You have the democracy, you have the freedom to run and unseat incumbents that may be those bad apples. So definitely much respect and applause to you for that.
Absolutely.
It's needed.
It's absolutely. We need more of it.
Certainly. Now, also, I know another area you're passionate about is entrepreneurship. I guess you can tell us just kind of experience you've had working with teens and within the entrepreneurship capacity.
Sure. So, and that's a interesting story. I didn't start off, with a passion for entrepreneurship. It was me just, helping a friend that started an organization that was charged with teaching youth entrepreneurship, and that's Kenneth Allen with the Kenneth Allen Foundation for Entrepreneurship. And I started working with Kenneth probably about 15 years ago. But we basically did camps. We started off with doing camps for the Indiana Black Expo, and there was a competition associated with the camp. And we just start children off as early as 9 years old, giving them basic foundations on, how you come up with an idea, what of some resources you may have already available that you don't have to make anything or buy anything. You can, you can be an entrepreneur by giving a service, whether that's cutting hair or mowing grass and that sort of thing. So that was a lot of fun working with youth and seeing their, them, come up with these creative ideas, and some of these youth are continuing to do some of the work now.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it starts that foundation, helping youth understand you don't have to be already come from a wealthy family or have a lot of money to start a business. You can start off with a service, doing something that you're already good at and passionate about, and make money doing it.
Yep, absolutely.
Wow. All right, Bryan. That's a lot of good tips and strategies, especially from the election standpoint. I just think it's so important, and I think especially now when a presidential election year, just had the presidential election completed. Just people highlighted for people, hopefully, just how important it is to get involved in the process and make their voices heard. Yes. And then also just giving teens just examples of how they can get involved, and especially for those who have aspirations of being politicians. It's getting started, getting it. Like, it's a contact sport, but gotta start somewhere, and then get to roll up your sleeves and do the work. But there's so many opportunities.
It's a lot of opportunities. There's no special requirements. A lot of times, if you're and sometimes this is a problem, but if you're a breathing adult, and can fill out the forms, you can get your name on the ballot. But that's why we need bright people and strong folks that get some heart and determination to make sure that they're getting in there, and you don't have to start off as, run for Congress or anything like that. You can decide to be a precinct committee person, just, kind of responsible for your own neighborhood, and, and you can kind of rise and, go from there. You can start from any place.
Great advice, and something I'll definitely keep in mind. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, Bryan, what would be the best play for people to contact you? The best way if people want to get in contact with you to find out more. Your best contact.
Sure. You can always find me on social media. at Bryan Chatfield, and my page is Community to Elect Bryan Chatfield. You can also visit my website at bryanchatfield.com and find me there. Always open to communication and dialogue, so don't be shy to inbox me or send me an email or any of those things.
Great. Fantastic. Well, I know the citizens of Wayne Township, they're in good hands. They elected you to the advisory board, and they're going to do great things, and looking forward to just seeing you continue to make an impact. And it's great to know that we have politicians in office that truly care and have a heart for service. So definitely happy to see that.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
Bryan, thanks again for taking time out your busy day to just share with the Mentor Select podcast how you can get involved in politics, and especially get teens involved in the process and excited about it. So really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you providing a platform to get my message out. I think that's very, very important. And so congratulations on the work you're doing with the podcast and winning them, or not necessarily winning the Ironman, but completing the Ironman. You're going to win next time. Appreciate you.
Yeah, worth a shot. Indeed.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Hosted by Derek Phillips. Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. We get it. That's why Derek interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. That's why we do the show. Be sure to share Mentor Select with other parents of teens. Follow us on social media at Mentor Select to stay up to date on the latest tips, strategies, and resources for parenting teens. Send your questions and comments to Derek@mentorselect.com. Tune in every Wednesday for new episodes. Till next time, this is Mentor Select.